Taiwan raises its travel alert to orange for visitors to China as safety concerns reach an all-time high. A Japanese nutritional supplement company faces a class action in Taiwan after dozens of people reported serious side effects. U.S. presidential hopefuls Joe Biden and Donald Trump face off in the first debate ahead of this year's election. Plus, we find out how these singing rubbish trucks help transform Taiwan from garbage island to a world leader in recycling. Hello and welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Thank you for joining us. Travel agencies are reeling after Taiwan raised its alert level for travelers to China, Hong Kong, and Macau, telling Taiwanese citizens not to go unless absolutely necessary. It's the first travel advisory Taiwan has introduced since the pandemic, which stops just short of a flat-out ban. Joyce Zeng has more.
Cross-strait ties getting worse as travel agencies in Taiwan worry over the government's decision to up its travel advisory to China, Hong Kong, and Macau, urging Taiwanese citizens not to go unless absolutely necessary.
旅行业是蛮伤害的，说是不是不要一下子跳那么多级？
跟大陆那边联系的结果就是没有影响，就是如期出发。
Taiwan has raised its travel alert for China to an orange warning, the second highest alert effective immediately, citing various changing national security laws by Beijing. It's just short of an outright travel ban. Just last week, new guidelines from Beijing threaten the death penalty for advocates of Taiwan independence. There were already concerns for the safety of Taiwanese travelers to China after a member of a tour group was detained there for several days.
如果政府没有因应状况去提醒国人注意危险讯号的话，是政府失职。
Beijing has been upping its coercion of Taiwan with military drills and suspension of tariff reliefs since President Lai Ching-te took office in Taipei in May. China analysts say Beijing's increasing use of legal means to reject Taiwanese sovereignty shows that it sees Lai as a real threat to its goal of unification, but that wielding its laws in this way could work against China in the long run.
This has some potential for it to impact folks that aren't just Taiwan citizens, but all of the rest of us. And countries that send people to China or maybe to third countries that are friendly with China, you know, it puts in Beijing's court this decision to determine what is a Taiwan independence activity or not.
Cross-strait analysts say by creating an environment where people are afraid to travel freely in China, whether it's for business, study, or to visit loved ones, hurts opportunities for political and personal dialogue, a risky path forward for an already tense relationship. Ethan Chen and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's presidential office has submitted a request for a constitutional interpretation of legislative amendments passed in May. The reforms, which came into force this week, gives the legislature much more oversight power over the president and executive branch. And it's caused scuffles between the ruling and opposition parties in the legislature, as well as protests around the country. Our reporter Tiffany Wong has been following the legislative reforms and is joining us from Taipei. Tiffany, what does this latest move by the presidential office mean?
Well, this is just the latest in a string of petitions being submitted to the Constitutional Court this week from various government bodies in Taiwan. And they're all hoping that the court will interpret the reforms as unconstitutional, meaning that the legislative branch would not have the power to have so much oversight over the executive. And that now includes subpoena powers with these latest amendments. Now, the cabinet had also raised their own concerns about the bill, saying that the scope is difficult to interpret. But the opposition Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party, who helped pass the bill, say that actually the ruling Democratic Progressive Party proposed similar reforms back when they had a legislative majority. This is what the KMT chair had to say.
几年前，民进党所提出来的版本一模一样。民进党自己改变了立场，应该说自己违反自己的初衷，违反当时改革的一个决心，而用违宪这样的一个理由去做遮羞布，我想最后的结果社会绝对不能接受。
Earlier in June, the cabinet once again tried to block the law by sending it back to the legislature for a revote, but that was passed yet again by that combined majority from the two opposition parties.
Given this development, Tiffany, do you think a recall is likely?
Well, with both the cabinet and the Democratic Progressive Party's legislative caucus submitting their own requests for constitutional interpretation, and other branches of the government, including the Control Yuan, which is the government's top watchdog body, indicating their support for petitions like these, that's kind of adding pressure for the court to reinterpret this law. But as the amendments had already passed through 3 readings in the legislature, amidst all these protests from both lawmakers and constituents, and that revote called by the cabinet failing to work in their favor, that's kind of reinforced these bills' legitimacy. And with the presidential office's petition, it's very much a last attempt for Taiwan's ruling party to limit the oversight of the legislature. And we may not know the outcome of the Constitutional Court's ruling for a while.
Thank you, Tiffany. That was Tiffany Wong live for us in Taipei. U.S. presidential contenders Joe Biden and Donald Trump locked horns during a live TV debate, taking personal stabs while discussing the U.S. economy, immigration, and foreign policy, among other topics. Reese Ayers reports on the debate and reactions to it.
Muted mics and strict time limits didn't stop Joe Biden and Donald Trump from getting personal at their first live televised debate of this U.S. election cycle.
My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
His presidency is, without question, the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country.
I mean, what are you talking about? You have the morals of an alley cat.
Give you a minute, sir.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one.
But between the quips and barbs, there was at least some insight into the two candidates' policies. One major issue for US voters, the economy. Hosts asked Trump how his planned 10% tariff increase on imports could add to inflation.
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things.
Also on the economy, Biden suggested increasing taxes for the super rich, though he stumbled a few times with his numbers.
We have 1,000 trillionaires in America. I mean, billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period.
Abortion was another hot topic, with Trump accusing Biden of supporting pregnancy terminations up until and even after birth. Biden hit back, saying he wanted to leave the issue of abortion with healthcare professionals by reinstating Roe v. Wade. Immigration, Trump's signature topic, was a subject he was eager to jump to several times throughout the debate.
And because of his ridiculous, insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime.
But it was an issue Biden claimed to have bested his opponent on.
What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office.
Foreign policy took center stage for a large chunk of the debate, with Trump claiming conflicts could have been avoided if he had won a second term.
As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, the president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine.
And Biden stuck to his guns on the support he's provided to Ukraine, a level of aid Trump has consistently criticized.
By the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point.
And in a debate littered with insults, a surprise argument about their golfing abilities.
And by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Okay, let's
not act like children.
President Trump, we're going to turn.
Let's not act like children.
Post-debate, Trump has been accused of lying throughout much of the show, while many, including some fellow Democrats, focused on Biden's apparent frailty and inability to finish sentences.
And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look.
Flash polls after the debate show that around 2/3 of American viewers think Trump came out on top. Biden's VP, Kamala Harris, was quick to defend his performance.
Yes, there was a slow start, but it was a strong finish. And what became very clear through the course of the night is that Joe Biden is fighting on behalf of the American people.
But Republicans say Trump crushed it.
You were watching this debate, you're voting for Donald Trump. It's one of the greatest contrasts between two politicians I've ever seen in my life.
The two candidates are scheduled to meet again on the debate stage in September, where they'll have another chance to convince the US public that they're the one best suited to run the country. Klein Wang and Reese Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
More than 30 people who fell ill after taking faulty supplements have launched a class action lawsuit that may reach courts in 2 countries. John Van Trieste has this report.
Are these nutritional supplements to blame for a series of sudden kidney illnesses across Taiwan? Over 30 people who say their health suffered after taking them have joined in a class action lawsuit against the Japanese manufacturer's Taiwan branch, and they aren't ruling out a lawsuit in Japan if it can't pay. Dozens of people across Taiwan reported poor health after taking red yeast rice supplements made by Kobayashi Pharmaceutical earlier in the year. They join a string of consumers hospitalized in Japan, where 5 people are believed to have died after taking the supplements. Tests have found unexpected compounds. But while the product has been recalled since March, some say they've suffered irreversible damage to their health.
我因为左肾有水肿，我就去做手术治疗。那手术治疗出来之后，左肾功能低下，变成我现在就是只有靠右肾才能够运行。
我希望他们要负责这个问题电话打过去，但是我把钱退给你啊，不然就红利点数给你啊，这样子。
Others who can prove they bought the product have until the end of July to join the lawsuit. The consumer rights group behind the suit says this is because not all consumers may have developed symptoms right away.
我们的损害可能不是立即的，那会不会在若干时日之后发生什么样损害，我们不知道。我们能够做的就是提起这样的团体诉讼，来为消费者争取该有的权利。
In a year of food safety scandals, this Consumer Protection Association wants to make it clear to companies that if they sell unsafe products, they will be held to account. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The world's largest military drills have begun in the waters around Hawaii. Known as RIMPAC, the exercises involve dozens of countries, including the U.S. and Israel. The drills come as tensions rise in the Asia-Pacific region. Jaime Okan takes a closer look at their significance.
Well, a few hours ago, the United States announced that its largest ever naval exercises, RIMPAC, are officially underway. Now, RIMPAC is actually an acronym. It stands for Rim of the Pacific, and that's because the majority of the countries taking part in these exercises sit alongside the rim of the Pacific Ocean. Countries like Indonesia, Japan, Canada, the United States, Mexico, and even down here to Chile. Now, all these countries convene in the middle of the Pacific Ocean in Hawaii for 2 months of exercises. And Hawaii is actually where we're going to be next week to get a closer look at these exercises. But the drills are not just focused on Asian countries alone. Other countries from Europe as well, like the UK, Belgium, France, Germany, that are looking to increase their military presence in the Indo-Pacific will also be in Hawaii conducting large-scale exercises as well. Now, to get a sense of the scale of these exercises, 30 warships, as well as 150 aircraft will be carrying out these exercises, as well as 25,000 total personnel. That's the total of the 29 countries that will be in Hawaii that are taking part of these drills. Now, earlier, I spoke to Jessica Taylor, a security analyst from the Atlantic Council in Washington, D.C., and I asked her, what is so significant about these large-scale exercises?
I think as we more and more are kind of coming to the conclusion in the region that a lot of different countries are having the same threat perception, that it's very important for us to get together and make sure that we have the interoperability to operate together. It's also a time for us to have an opportunity to gain trust and build trust between militaries. While senior leaders might know each other, every year militaries and personnel switch out in different regions, especially for the U.S. So it's very important to ensure that we have readiness, and we do that by ensuring that we have regularly scheduled exercises.
Now, Jessica, I want to get your take on this Indo-Pacific region. It's such a dynamic area with tensions running high in the Taiwan Strait. You have the clashes between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea. And you also have these continued weapons tests from North Korea around the Korean Peninsula. I want to ask you, how do you think countries are going to approach an exercise, an opportunity like RIMPAC, and sort of to try to manage this area?
So I think even just bringing up which threat we're talking about, you really, hit on something that's very important, that for this exercise specifically, that because there's different threats, it provides this opportunity to get together and exercise as militaries for a diversity of threats. I would say in the near term, especially as we get closer to the U.S. presidential election, there is real concern on the Korean Peninsula for something to occur around the U.S. presidential election. And I think more so there's concern around increasing tensions across the strait, but that something happening on the Korean Peninsula is more of a near-term concern, where something across the strait is more so, as the Defense Department, the pacing threat, something that we're concerned about for years and possibly a decade or so to come. But I think there's also the concern, like we're not exactly sure if something happens either across the strait or in the Korean Peninsula, if either China or North Korea would take advantage of that opportunity.
That was Jessica Taylor, a security analyst from the Atlantic Council, speaking with our reporter Jaime Okan, who'll be following the RIMPAC exercises over the next few weeks. At the same time as RIMPAC, the United States, Japan, and South Korea have launched their first ever trilateral defense exercises. The U.S. aircraft carrier Theodore Roosevelt arrived in South Korea earlier this week for the drills, just as North Korea carried out ballistic missile tests. Japanese and South Korean destroyers will carry out exercises alongside the U.S. carrier group for 3 days. U.S., Japanese, and South Korean leaders agreed to the exercises named Freedom Edge at their summit meeting at Camp David last August. China is investigating 2 former defense ministers over corruption allegations after expelling them from the Communist Party. Chinese state media says Li Shangfu is suspected of receiving huge sums of money and his predecessor Wei Fenghe of accepting bribes. For more on this, Louise Watt spoke to Zhang Jing, a senior research fellow at the Society for Strategic Studies in Taiwan.
How unusual is this to have former defense ministers investigated for corruption and bribery in China?
Corruption is always existing in every government, but before 2017, all the corruption case was the report individually by the media, either from the party or the government control the media. But there's no statistics. But the legal system in the Chinese communist regime, they put all the corruption cases in a new statistics report. And the numbers of the corrupted officials, which is amazing. And there is no we call as a ceiling. They can reach as high as the member in a central standing committee of the political bureau. Let me put it this way: this is a scandal. This communist regime still can afford. So they are openly to investigate all this crime.
China's military has been the focus of an anti-corruption purge in recent months. What are we to make of that?
All this corruption cannot be completed by any single individual. It's actually a systemic the corruption. You cannot do all this corrupt behavior alone. You need someone will receive the money, and you need someone you're subordinate and close the connection to hide the money for you. But China is a society is using electronic payment so significantly, and almost every information is so transparent. Once you've been put under investigation, it's very hard to hide.
And is this anti-corruption purge and the removal of the ex-defense minister, is this going to affect China's fighting ability at all?
It's still too early yet to make the conclusion. I would say there will be a certain level of damage, but how significant they need more thorough investigation about what are the members and what are the systems who get involved in those cases. If you ask me whether they will be affected and undermine the fighting capability, the answer is yes. But how significant it can be is hard to tell so far.
That was Zhang Jing, a senior research fellow at the Society for Strategic Studies, talking to Louise Watt. EU leaders have renominated European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen for the bloc's top job. Von der Leyen is known for her strong support of Ukraine and hawkish attitude toward China. The endorsement came during a summit in Brussels, where they also selected former Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa as the next president of the European Council, and Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas as the next foreign affairs chief. The European Parliament is set to vote on the nominations next month. Bolivian President Luis Arce has rejected suggestions that he himself staged this week's attempted coup to improve his popularity. The country's top former military commander, Juan José Zuniga, gathered troops in the main square of the capital in an apparent bid to overthrow the government. The attempt was quickly put down as Arce was able to rally the public to his side. Zuniga was arrested but told police the president had asked him to help boost his popularity. Arce said the former general acted on his own accord. Taiwan has one of the highest recycling rates in the world and near spotless streets. Rosie Greninger explains how the country's singing rubbish trucks help the island become a global leader in waste disposal.
Echoing through the streets of Taipei, Beethoven's Fur Release is a call to action to rush outside and throw out the trash. Every day except Wednesdays and Sundays, lines of people wait by the side of the road during their designated time slot, holding trash bags. Known for its punctuality, the garbage truck waits for no one.
突然有一些事情的话，就会去追垃圾车啦。
就是来不及的时候就会这样，所以想办法倒啊，没有倒怎么？
For some residents, it's frustrating to plan their lives around the rubbish removal system. But for others, it's fostered a sense of community, as neighbours are given a chance to catch up. But Taiwan wasn't always so meticulous about its waste management. After an economic boom in the 1960s, its streets became strewn with litter. And by 1995, most of the country's landfills reached capacity, earning it the nickname Garbage Island.
Taipei and Taiwan would just sort of pile up trash in certain designated zones, and then when a typhoon would come, it would just spray the trash everywhere.
With rubbish piles creating a terrible stench and attracting pests, a community activist campaign pushed for government action. And in 1998, a Waste Disposal Act was implemented, introducing a recycling system that included the singing trucks. The law also established legal penalties for improper garbage disposal, taxed businesses, and introduced education programs and colour-coded bins to encourage residents to separate their waste.
A few years after that, the government told residents they need to buy these bags to throw away waste they couldn't recycle. The funds raised to be used in waste management facilities. It encouraged residents to be more conscious of how much waste they were throwing away and an incentive to recycle.
But some people tried to cheat the system, using public bins to throw out their trash, leading to the government removing most of those bins. Despite that, Taiwan's recycling rate has grown astronomically in a short amount of time, from 1% in 1998 to now one of the best in the world at over 55%. The streets of Taipei are now largely free from litter, a sign for people here that the system has worked, and a framework that waste researchers hope other countries will adapt to reduce waste and increase recycling. Patrick Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Residents of an Illinois city say a massive sinkhole that opened up in their football field was like something out of a movie. The 30-meter wide, 9-meter deep sinkhole swallowed bleachers and a light pole in the city of Alton. No one was hurt in the collapse, but teams had been on the field days before. Local news sources say the operators of a limestone mine under the field had reported the surface collapsing down into the gaps left by mining or drilling. Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, check out these deaf performers who are finding creative ways to excel in the performing arts. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.
For more news from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.